We become primarily a media-driven soundbite society. People know a little bit about something and go totally berserk. No homework, no research, no facts. Firearms is one of those subjects. I'm going to relay to you some firearms statistics, okay? And this is all public information. I like statistics if I can prove that they're true. So generally, private groups are not the best source for that. State and federal sources, generally, since they report to the taxpayers, you can get accurate, factual information. Okay, so here we go. According to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, there are over 300 million documented firearms in this country. 300 million. Approximately 54,000 state and local regulations. And that changes constantly because states keep trying to wedge or do whatever it is they're going to do. The Pennsylvania State Police run what's called the PIC system. It does background checks for potential firearms purchasers. And if you don't know much about that, actually, it was founded in 1998 as a way to intervene in domestic violent deaths. So, for the 2,163 registered firearms dealers in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Instant Check System did 1,125,362 firearm purchase approvals, 1 year, 2013. 420,464 handguns, 388,000 long guns, which means rifles or shotguns, okay? And about 316 sales were denied for cause. Somebody who wasn't allowed to have a gun was trying to buy one, okay? For the 76 dealers in Bucks County, 21,796 handguns were sold or transferred. 16,201 long guns, which are rifles or shotguns, in Bucks County. Statewide in Pennsylvania, there's 269,273 concealed weapons permits issued. In Bucks County, last year, our sheriff issued 10,559. And since the permits are good for 5 years, by my estimate, through the state police records, there's currently over 37,000 active concealed weapons permits in Bucks County. Okay. Pennsylvania last year, according to the state police, 849 homicides, 68% of those involved a firearm. 23,405 assaults. Now, these are personal assaults and robberies, but only 20% of those involved a firearm. So the person you're likely to encounter in a personal assault, more of those are done without a firearm than when the ones that are, okay? Women have gone from 8% to 38% of the firearms industry in the last 4 years, according to the American Shooting Sports Foundation and the Firearms Retailers Association. So, when you read studies and statistics, like I said, you have to dig into the group that's putting them out. Dr. Gary Glick, School of Criminology, Florida State University, according to his study, privately owned firearms stopped 2.5 million assaults last year. Okay? According to the Pro-Violence Policy Center, he was totally wrong, and it was only 67,740 times. And these groups both used the same method to compile these statistics. So if you split it in half and decide one is way too far and one is way too low, it's still a substantial and scary number, okay? Pro-crime states like New Jersey and New York don't release those statistics. It's very hard to get them. But in Pennsylvania, if you have a computer at home, you can go on the Pennsylvania State Police website, go to their annual firearms report, and all this information is public information at your disposal, okay? Now, generally, firearms instructors are probably the most enlightened as it relates to avoiding conflict, de-escalating, and withdrawing from a conflict. And the reason you might say, what do you mean? Any firearm instructor with any experience can tell you that a firearm is the least suitable resolution to a conflict because somebody's dead. What people don't realize, we get desensitized to death because you see it on television all the time. Kids see it in video games over and over and over. but the socioeconomic impact on an average person who is forced to take another human life is devastating. Devastating. People who don't go for counseling, and one of the most famous people in the country right now, George Zimmerman, involved in that shooting in Florida. And for those of you who didn't follow that very closely, in Florida, a capital murder trial is tried with 6 jurors. All the jurors were women. 5 white women, 1 minority. 5 of the women had children. Okay? They acquitted this guy. And I wasn't there. I mean, obviously, they have access to information that we don't. His attorneys begged him to go for counseling. Begged him. Doesn't need it. Doesn't need it. He's been in trouble ever since. The basic human concept, what happens is, whether you're religious or not, from the time we're born, we're taught, thou shalt not kill. When another human being takes a human's life, this is a serious, serious psychological event. Professional police officers and military people go through counseling because this is a horrible thing to overcome. It changes the way you're going to look at yourself, the way your family looks at you, the way your neighbors look at you. Because you won't be the nice lady that works in a shoe store, you'll be the lady who killed somebody. And regardless of all the circumstances in front of that, that's what people remember. You killed somebody. So what they do, and generally the social stigma that goes with this, is all of a sudden the neighbor's kids don't want to come over to your house to play. Because Kathy's mom killed somebody. None of the circumstances about that, none of the reasons why. You murdered somebody. Okay? And this goes on to your employer. Kathy was such a nice lady. Maybe we shouldn't have her out with the customers. You know, she killed somebody. And this is going to follow you the rest of your life. Okay? People who don't get counseling generally start in a downward spiral that ends up with alcoholism or death. Generally, suicide is the most prevalent end if they don't get counseling. Because you can't, as a human being, come to terms with the fact that you killed another person. When you see this on TV, it's not the same as seeing somebody right there. And it's actually a double-edged sword. Most responsible firearms instructors will tell you that they spend more time teaching students how to avoid a conflict than they do being proficient with a firearm. Firearms are generally, it's a very simple tool. So the use of it is not a complicated set of instructions. When to use it is the complicated part. So what happens is when you do this, you're taught not to do this if there's any possible way you can withdraw. But a criminal doesn't care about that. They force you to make a decision that you don't want to make. They force you to do something that you would give anything to get out of doing. But you don't get a choice. So on one side, you're alive. And that too is a double-edged sword. I'm alive, but now I killed somebody. What I teach my students is that you do not shoot to kill. That is a complete misconception. You shoot to live, and only if that's the only choice that you have left. I can tell you right now, if I had a chance to avoid a shooting, if I had to run and scream like a little girl, I'd be out of that room in 10 freaking seconds. Okay? And there's a good reason for that. I understand what's going to happen. Not only that, you do get forced to use a weapon to defend yourself, and you kill somebody. According to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you've now met the criteria for murder or manslaughter. When the police come to investigate this, they get out a form and it says homicide investigation. It doesn't say poor woman defending herself from a jackass husband. It says homicide investigation. And on that form are 3 slots. There's one for a victim, one for perpetrators, and one for witnesses. That's it. That's it. So you have to fully understand what your rights are because you need to identify to that police officer right away who you are. Which one of those people am I? Most of the police I've interviewed have very little or no training in dealing with civilian shootings. When they respond to that scene, what they tell me, the thing that they're the most fearful of, is that you're going to shoot them. They have families, they have children, they want to go home. They know that an inexperienced, presumably non-professional person has just had the crap scared out of them. They've been traumatized because someone tried to kill you, or you wouldn't have had to use deadly force. And now you had to take another person's life. And an experienced police officer realizes when they're coming to you, your brain is fried. You are jello, and you have a gun. The person they're the most fearful of is you. So what I tell my students to do, and instructors argue about this, and I mean this is going to go on till the end of time. Never, ever, ever, ever talk to the cops without a lawyer. And this is good advice if you're guilty. Most of the attorneys who tell their clients this defend guilty people. So it's good advice for them. But you have to put yourself in a police officer's position. They're responding to a shooting. There's a dead person. You better say something, because everybody around you is going to say something. Okay? A lot of the same tactics that help you avoid using deadly force are the same tactics that help you avoid interaction with criminals without a firearm. The idea is basically the same. You want to de-escalate. You don't want to be involved. For those of us who don't deal with criminals on a regular basis, you don't realize that this is a business to them. And we are meat, okay? When they look at prospective victims, they do an interview. They kind of look. How can I get what I want with the least amount of trouble? There's two things that every interviewed criminal will agree on. There's two things that they do not want. They do not want to be identified, and they do not want to get hurt. If they get disabled, all their buddies will steal their stuff. A lot of the shootings that you see in the city every night are criminals shooting each other, fighting over drugs, fighting over other things they've stolen, which I could watch that all day, but that's beside the point. The thing of this is, you have to realize that to those people, this is business. This is a shopping center right here. What could I sell for drugs or whatever? Who has the most valuable stuff that I can get easy? And so they survey you, okay? The thing of this is, women are the top victim group in the country. The top, only followed by the elderly. No insult intended. But the thing is, you're the number one victims. You're the victims of most crime, violent, robbery, whatever, okay? Because the assumption is that you're weak, which I can tell you for a fact I know is just not true, okay? The thing is, statistically speaking, women who have training and use firearms are 68% more likely to shoot and kill somebody before a man. Your protection instincts are stronger, and men are pretty much full of crap. I can handle that. That's not going to get me. You better stay back. I really mean it. I'm going to do something. Where women, no bullshit. You cross that line and you're done. Bang! And that's the end of that. Okay? They statistically, I've been married a long time, can you tell? I'm still alive. But the thing is, women generally for themselves set a much clearer parameter. This is it, and that is it. Statistically speaking, women fire fewer shots than men and are fatal more often. There's a line there. And if you have children, for guys who, I mean, you love your kids, you protect your kids, but it's not the same as a woman. Female mammals are the most dangerous on the planet. This is a statistical fact, okay? We all have radar. We all have instincts that help us see danger. But we become so sophisticated and lazy, it's like any other muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. Now, you don't have to walk around your entire life, is it him? Is it him? That's not going to work, okay? But you do have to pay attention to your surroundings. Situational awareness, which sounds like a very technical term, means look where you're going. Look around you. Look at your surroundings. And if you pay attention to what you're looking at, you can spot a potential threat. We all know those things, but we just don't have to use them. But the thing is, in this area in particular, Bucks and Montgomery County and Northern Philadelphia are inundated with heroin. Every police officer I've talked to said that this is a major, major problem. So what happens is, and if you have any experience with opiate addiction, which luckily for me I don't, but I had a couple clients about 6 years ago, a psychiatrist and a psychologist, husband and wife, came for firearm instruction. Very unlikely group. Their primary work was drug rehab and counseling. And they completely understood the people that they dealt with. And so we actually traded services because I didn't know anything about that. So I said, I'll teach you to do this. You teach me about heroin addiction. And it's extremely unpleasant. A condensed version, when someone has a heroin addiction and they run out of heroin, their entire body is in agony. Okay? He said, imagine your arm was cut off and you got drugs to stop the pain. But you knew when you got this, morphine or whatever, there was a clock, and in 10 minutes it was going to run out. That's what heroin addiction is like. They know that a specific amount of time goes by, they're going to be out of drugs, and their body is going to start tearing them to pieces. So when they interact with us, the way they view us is, you're the reason that I'm in pain. This is your fault, because if you gave me what I needed for drugs, this wouldn't be happening to me. So this is on you. And that's a complete rationalization for them. That's exactly how they see us. We're interfering with them being able to stop their pain. So whatever they do to us is of no consequence, since it's our fault anyway, right? And I'm listening to these people going, what? They say, we're carrying guns. They realize that the people they counsel, from 1 minute to the next, it could be over. A lot of professional security people now who advise hospitals and medical workers advise those people, those women, the nurses, take your whites off before you leave. Because when a drug addicted person sees you, white clothes, nurse, drugs. That's all they can do. That's all they can do. A lot of the women that come for me for training, real estate agents, lawyers, people who who understand who they deal with. Realtors in particular, which is something I hadn't thought of until a couple years ago. You're meeting someone in a remote location. You know their name and address, but you really have no idea who they are. And you don't know who else knows they're coming, who else knows you're there. And police will be the first to tell you that police are only minutes away when seconds count. Police officer's job, and this is a horrible job. This entire nation is on a cop benching bash, which makes me nuts. We ask them to pretty much do an impossible job. We want you to protect us, apprehend criminals, but for Christ's sake, don't hurt anybody, and don't hurt anybody's feelings. Not going to happen. When I was a kid, we lived in Philadelphia, and when a cop yelled for you to stop, you stopped because you figured after that something really bad was going to happen to you. Now it's a negotiation. Police officers and police instructors instruct their officers, you're not allowed to shoot somebody in the back. A lot of times police officers are held to the same criteria as a civilian for the use of deadly force. They have to prove they're in jeopardy. So you're trying to apprehend somebody who would, this is why I was never in law enforcement. Because if I was trying to apprehend a child molester, for example, and he wouldn't stop, that's why I would make a terrible cop. And I know that, luckily I know that. The men and women who do that, this is a very tough job that requires a lot of restraint and a lot of the personal kind of integrity toward the law to treat everybody fairly before they, at least until they get their trial. Now, the other thing we have to understand is, since we don't deal with criminals, you don't have any interaction with them. When they confront you, you have no experience. Two of the groups of people that we'll go through our entire life and deal with very, very limited are police officers and criminals. So generally when we do interact with either group, we do it wrong. We don't have any experience. I can tell you right now, the best conflict that you're ever going to get into, the most egregious criminal that you're ever going to confront, the easiest way to stop that is don't be there. Don't be there. And what that means is, there's things that you shouldn't do, and there's places you shouldn't go. I could go shopping, but there's no reason I can't wait till she can go with me, and now there's two of you. And I'm not saying you walk around like as an armed guard. That's not it. But you think, okay? It's dark outside. How many people here have a flashlight? In your pocket? All right. Flashlights are fantastic security tools. Okay? Huh?
A flashlight on my phone. Yeah.
No, too slow. The thing is, what you don't realize is, if you don't perceive a threat, at a specific distance, you're not going to have any time to deal with that. We're going to talk a little bit about a police training officer named Dennis Tooler. And Dennis Tooler was a police training officer in 1982. One of his students asked him, when should a police officer draw his gun? How close can I let someone with a contact weapon get to me before I have to be prepared to do something? And he didn't know. So they started to do drills and tests. And this is a common police training technique that's used now. It's called the Tooler drill. An average person can close a distance of 21 feet in 1.5 to 2 seconds. 1.5 to 2 seconds. So this threat that you see at that wall, 2 seconds from now, here they are. And they did this, they took big fat people, big variety of people, old, young, and this was still the average, okay? So the thing is, when you think you're going to perceive a threat, well, right there's a problem. That's too late. That's too late. The best option you have is to not be selected. Deselection is a process by which we eliminate ourselves from the food chain. And there's an easy way to do that. It's harder for women than men. And that's a statistical fact. Women are supposed to be beautiful all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's right on television. Right? And it's on the intranet, so it must be true. Right? The thing is, in most modern teaching methods, this is called the stealth lifestyle. And it sounds kind of technical, but it isn't. What the stealth lifestyle means is, the first part of it is be invisible. Be invisible. In a room full of shiny people, be the person that's not that person. Right? You don't want to attract attention to yourself. And this is tough for a woman because you're supposed, like I said, it's right on TV, so it must be true. But the thing is, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being beautiful and having nice clothing and all that stuff. But what you do is you pick when you need to do that. Right? You don't need to be totally hot and over the chart to go to the grocery store. Okay? Unless you're still in the conquest part of your life. If you're still hunting, okay? If you're still hunting, then you need your camo. I get that, okay? But most of the time you don't. And you have to think about this too. If you need to look a specific way to attract a partner, what kind of a partner is that going to be? If your superficial appearance is the only thing they find interesting, what kind of a partner is that? Is that the person you want? Right? Because sooner or later, everybody has to take off their makeup. Right? So, there's nothing wrong with dressing up or being beautiful or having nice jewelry. But the thing is, you have to think about what's in your best interest. Remember this interview that's going on. All a drug dealer needs to do, for that necklace, he could probably sell that. All you need to do is get one fix. I just need that. And if the stuff hanging around your neck will get that done, you're it. Because if she does, well, she has a scarf, who the hell knows?
Rob, you can have this if you really do.
The thing about this is you don't want to walk around like some kind of wired up whack job. But at the same time, you have to pay attention to what's going on around you. Okay? How many people have pepper spray? No? Okay. How many people know that pepper spray has an expiration date? Pepper spray has an expiration date. When you look on the bottom of the can, it'll tell you sell by, use by, whatever. So here you think you have this magic wand, and you pull it out and it goes psst. Okay? Not very effective. But the thing is, you have to pay attention to what's going on around you. When you get home, like, look at that. Nobody's husbands like bombarded them with pepper spray junk for Christmas?
No. They're hoping we get taken.
That's another avenue of defense I hadn't thought of. Okay, but the thing is, you want to be deselected. You want to be pulled out of the victim pool. And how do you do that? There's nothing interesting about you. It's easier for a man because there's not that much interesting about us anyway. But for women, it's harder. And everybody understands that. But the thing is, when you're going through your chores and you're deciding what to do, decide how to do them. If you're going to a party where there's a lot of people like you, or you're coming here to an evening with a lot of your friends, the odds of you being attacked are kind of slim. Not out of the question, but kind of slim. Okay? But if you're going out in the evening someplace else, you don't need that stuff. You don't need a nice necklace, and you don't need a shiny ring. You don't need those things. Not if they put you in danger. When you make these decisions, you have to decide what's at your best advantage. Okay? Do I need this stuff? Yes or no? I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying the risk is on you. You decide how much risk you want to take. You have to be careful. You want to be confident. One of the easiest ways to get a criminal not interested in you has to do with your posture. Are you erect? Are you standing erect? No pun intended. Let's not go crazy. Are you looking where you're going? Because what I said, a criminal does not want to be identified, and they don't want to get hurt. And if you're looking, you can identify them. The favorite thing for a criminal now is iPhones and iPods. This is awesome. You get a guy or a woman to stick phones in their ears, put their head down, and walk like this. So all they have to do is hit them from behind, grab whatever that is. They got their fix. You're on the ground. You don't even know what the hell their sneakers look like. Perfect for them, not that great for us. Okay? But if you're standing up and you look around, when you go outside, you don't have to, who's that? That's not it. But you look. Look at your surroundings. Who's there? And if you just make eye contact, they know you saw them. They'll wait for the next person who isn't looking. Okay? Flashlights. Flashlights don't seem like a very exciting security tool. But the thing is, if you go to the parking lot and you turn on a flashlight, you're paying attention. Even if it's dark, if you turn it up, you can identify them. They don't want to be identified. So they don't have to bother with you. They'll wait for the next moron who does not have a flashlight. Because there's plenty. They're not going to risk dealing with you if they don't have to, especially if there's any risk to them at all. They want that. Okay? So the thing is, if you watch those things, 99% of the shootings in this country, self-defense civilian shootings, when they're researched and studied, could have been avoided. There was a way to do it, but the person didn't know what to do. Men are the worst. They're all the worst. They don't know when to back off. The thing is, if you don't understand the consequences of taking another human's life, you don't realize how important it is to back off and to leave things alone. Like I said, I have no problem. Young men are the worst. Early 20s to mid 20s, they have no communication skills. They know how to text, but they can't talk. Okay? I watched a training DVD, instructor, a friend of mine from Dallas sent me. And you see these two guys, and the camera's up here, and they have iPhones. And these guys they're right here. And the one guy does this. The other guy looks at his and goes, now these guys, they're right here, but there's no talking. So this goes back and forth 2 or 3 times. And then one guy pulls out a gun, bang, shoots the other guy, dead. Dead, killed him. The police come, the guy who shot him calls the police. The police get there and he goes, look what he said. He thought that this was a legitimate threat. It's on a phone, you moron. But to him, in his world, this is real interaction. They just don't know. And if you can't verbally communicate, you can't de-escalate a conflict. When you're having a problem with somebody, you can always go, look, I'm really sorry. See you later. And it doesn't matter what they say. Part of the problem is people don't realize if somebody insults you, unless you value their opinion, it doesn't matter. Guys, again, statistically, guys are the worst for this. They react to that before they think about it. When I have young couples in the shop, and we're talking about this, typical scenario is this. You come out of a restaurant, and there's always a drunk loser outside the restaurant because he has nothing else to do. And he's hanging around outside, he doesn't have a date, he's miserable, whatever. So you come out with your girlfriend or your wife, and the guy goes, man, awesome butt on that, I'd like to have that. The immediate reaction is, I'm going to kill that son of a bitch. Are you? Really? So this person that you don't know, whose opinion you don't value, you're going to sacrifice possibly your freedom, your job, and your girl to react to this? What do you mean? I said, well, if you kill this guy without cause, you're going to go to prison, and somebody else will be dating her anyway, which is usually when they jump up out of the chair and get excited. Okay? But these are facts. These are facts. If you use a firearm incorrectly and a district attorney decides to prosecute you, this is a freaking nightmare. You have to remember they have all the money in the world, our money, to literally beat the crap out of you. Defending yourself from a firearms assault, $100,000 is nothing. Where does an average person get that kind of money? Since all these things are attached to this, not being involved in this is a far better defense psychology. Firearms are the last resort and the least desirable answer to a problem. Because even though you might be temporarily safe now, you have all these other consequences. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? And if you carry a firearm on a regular basis, and from the statistics, we know a lot of people are. Not only that, you have to think about this all the time. Because if this person gets too close to you, just like if you don't have a firearm, if they get too close, you're not going to have time, 1.5 to 2 seconds to close this 21 feet. 1.5 to 2 seconds. So a lot of people who do carry guns, since they don't know that, they don't have that training, they have a really fancy holster under a zippered coat covered by a vest. And as this approach, they have 2 seconds to get this out and use it. You have to remember, in Pennsylvania, the use of a firearm to defend yourself, if you make a mistake, according to the FBI statistics, most self-defense shootings happen at 5 to 7 feet. 3 shots are fired and 2 miss because the person's upset or they can't control themselves. You're responsible for where those 2 shells went. So this guy's trying to kill you, and you fire a shot and hit him, the next 2 shots miss and hit some lady's kid in the head and kill him. You're done. You just murdered somebody, whether this is legitimate or not. You just murdered a stranger, and you're never, ever, ever going to be able to explain that. I've had people sit across the table from me and go, "What about the Good Samaritan Act, Rob?" What? And if you don't know what that is, the Good Samaritan Act covers private citizens who, you see a car wreck, the guy's suffocating, you're not a great nurse, but you're going to try to do CPR, and you accidentally crack their ribs. That's the Good Samaritan Act. I said, where did you get this idea? Well, it's on the internet. The guy has it on there. I said, who? Well, he has the Firearms blog. What's his name? Big Gun 35. Now, there's a substantial resource. Usually what I tell them, will Big Gun 35 come and testify for you in court? Because that's where you're going, okay? Another typical scenario that happens with people. Somebody is carrying a firearm, they walk out of a restaurant, and a woman's rolling around on the ground screaming for help, and 2 guys are beating the crap out of her. They pull out their flashlight and gun. Stop that right now! And an undercover police officer shows them their badge. They're trying to arrest a drug person transporting drugs. She's on PCP and kicking the crap out of these 2 cops. You just pointed a gun at a police officer. Where do you think you're going? What is the right response? Hey, I'm calling 911. Now you're going to get a reaction one way or the other. Either one of the people's going to get up and go, put that down or I'm going to kill you. That is a totally different conflict than this. In Pennsylvania, when you have a concealed weapons permit, the criteria for that is to save your life or the life of another. That's the only time the state recognizes that. A lot of people are confused. The sheriff's office issues a concealed weapons permit. It has nothing to do with using it. There's no authority or grace or anything attached to that. You paid a fee and you have a permit. Generally what I tell my clients is, you have a driver's license, don't you? Yeah. Are you allowed to go up on the sidewalk and run people over? Well, no, that's ridiculous. This is that, okay? The thing of this is it's become so prevalent. There's so many people who are carrying firearms. They don't understand what's going to happen when the gun goes off. And now they're surprised. Why are these people out to get me? Why is this happening to me? If you want the responsibility of having a firearm, you have to do these other things. You have to get training. You have to be careful. Now, women in firearms, the substantial part of that is, regardless of the size of your adversary, regardless of your size, you weigh 110 pounds, a guy weighs 250 pounds. In one shot, you're his equal. The thing with firearms, and you have to be careful about firearms and firearms regulations and politicians. Most politicians who get involved with firearms legislation are men. They're men. This is not going to be a problem for them, okay? But for a woman, you can be the equal of a 300-pound monster with a small firearm that you know how to use. Even in that context, you have to use it correctly. Okay? If you make a mistake, you're going to go to jail. All right? Now, we're going to talk about pocketbooks. And I know how dangerous this is. But most firearms people tell you, and I've been married long enough to know how important a pocketbook is. If somebody grabs your pocketbook, let them have it. And I know this is bad, okay? But I realize how bad this is. But say to yourself, what in this pocketbook is worth dying for? Because it's that simple. Whatever's in there, you could get another one, okay? All right.
Well, thank you, Robin. You have given us some great information.